Today, let's dive into the nature of experience. Because in the message of non-duality, it says that if you can't experience something directly or inherently, then we discard it or just ignore it. We just put it off to the side. It says that direct experience is the only evidence for reality, the reality of ourself, which is the experience of peace. So I'm going to walk us through the mechanics of the manifestation. Because according to non-duality, which is the Vedic knowledge of Advaita Vedanta, which literally means the knowledge of non-dualism, the knowledge of oneness, which is right in line with what the quantum physicists have found. Both the Vedantic knowledge and what the physicists have discovered is that there is only one substance in all of totality, that in this one substance arises the manifestation of the world that we know. And if something rises, that means that it has to have some sort of progression to it, meaning that this world of objects and matter, arose out of the no-thingness of the one substance that Advaita and the physicists point to. So how does something, which we'll call the world or matter, arise out of no thing? And then from here, once we walk through the progression, we're going to reverse engineer this back to ourself, which is the one substance of reality, to see if we can experience it ourselves, to see if this progression has any validity to it. And as we'll see, it's these types of investigations into experience that gives us more trust that this message is truthful, which then leads us to higher and higher levels of courage to turn ourselves inward to experience this one fabric of ourself. So the progression from no-thingness to thingness goes like this. Let's take my chest as the unified field that the physicists would call it, or self, or consciousness. This is the one fabric. This is the one that all arises out of. The first progression out of this no-thingness is a thought. And it is the thought, I am this body. Every morning, the first thing that comes into your existence, that it's so fine, it's so subtle that you don't even know it, is the thought, I am this body. And this thought is known as the I thought. It is described as the ego. It is the first thought of the individual. And it's in this first thought that all other thoughts arise out of. So we could say this is a first person thought, that all other second and third person thoughts arise out of. So this thought, I am the body has 5 sheaths. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to bring in my other hand so we can visualize this even more. So the thought comes in that I am this body, and the first sheath it's our will. This is also known as our vasanas, if we want to apply a Sanskrit word to it. Our vasanas is our tendencies and inclinations to move away from ourself. This is what keeps us out in the world facing outwards instead of turning within. And this is what gives us our uniqueness. We could say this is our individuality, that this is our conditioning that makes us all appear unique. From here, it rises into the intellect. And the intellect is where we say our reasoning is. It's our sensibility. It's our logic. And from here, it arises into the mind, the egoic mind, the mind that we believe is in our head, that we use as a tool to do life with. And from here, the mind rises into what is known as the prana, which is life energy. And whose life energy? It's the ego's life energy. It's actually the contraction, the feeling that we have within our body that I am in this body somewhere, which then rises into the body, into the physical body. Okay, this is the body we think we have. And so the thought, I am this body, the body is these 5 sheaths that rise in this fashion, in this progression. And then from the body, we have 5 senses, right? Our sight, smell, taste, touch, and sound looks onto the world. And this is the progression from the no-thingness all the way up to create the world. Yes, Molly?
Can you give an example of a vasana and a prana? Like something that would just be in just a basic example?
Yes. So a vasana is everything that comes through you and makes you unique and has you, as you are experiencing life, you could say these are like levers that come into play that make you experience or act in certain ways depending on what you're experiencing, like depending on what your situation is. So for an example, like I always use say you're at a traffic light and you pull out and somebody cuts you off, right? The lever of, you get a rise out of that, right? So that is a vasana coming into play. It's kind of like pulling I get a rise when somebody disses me in some way. I rise. That is, you can't control that rise. So I like to say your vasanas are these levers that are pulled that you don't have control on, that have you react and respond to your environment and your situation. And as you come back home to yourself, these vasanas die down. These reactions die down. And you could say they go from reactions into just responding to what is. These vasanas are also what make us unique. I mean, we know we're the essence of Scott is coming through in a certain way that is different than anybody else's essence. We could say that that's our vasana, that's our natural state. Does that help clarify?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, they're just like levers that are pulled in certain circumstances. And sometimes they're good levers and sometimes they're not. They're just our levers. And then the prana is literally the contracted feeling that I am in here somewhere. I'm a contraction. I feel myself. That it's just the sense of I, or the sense of me, is the prana. And again, it's stated as it's the life energy. But whose life? It's ego's life. It's my life's energy. It's not the universal life. It's not the universal energy. Because that's boundless, contractedless freedom. And I experience myself as contracted energy, a contracted feeling in some form or fashion in here somewhere. So that's the progression of the unified field, the universal consciousness, the one, the only substance that's here. It arises out of the thought, I am this body. It goes through the will, the intellect, the mind, the prana, the physical body, our five senses, into the world. You could say this is the universe. This is as big as we can want to imagine it, whatever we're looking on to. But this is separate from everything prior to it, right? This is all me, and this is everything other than me, and I'm looking on to everything other than me. That's why in Sanskrit the word world is loka, which means that which is seen or that which is experienced other than myself. So if we apply the understanding of non-duality, means if we have to be able to experience this ourselves to see if it's true. Because if we can't experience this, then everything that I just said, this whole progression, has to just be removed as false information. So this is where we reverse engineer this to see if it's true or not. Because we are these five senses right now looking onto the world. So let's reverse engineer it. And this is a backwards progression, so we're always looking at the prior thing to see if we took it away, would the thing after it exist. So meaning, if we took our five senses away, would the world exist? If this went away, would the world exist? What would know the world was here if we took our five senses away? So the underlying reality of the world is our five senses. Now, if we took the body away, would the five senses exist? No. If we took our prana away, would the sense of body exist? No. If we took our mind away, what would know anything? So where I'm going with this is when we start to look back and reverse this in our own experience, we start to see that this progression is actually the truth. And then once we get below the mind, it becomes so subtle because we lose what we think is our only tool to know something. Because if we lose our mind, how can we directly know the intellect and will? But we inherently know it's here, right? It's in here. I have reason. I'm a logical person. I do appear to have some will. I do appear that levers are pushed and pulled in certain circumstances. So it's not until we turn our attention all the way back to ourself that we can experience our will and our intellect directly. Which leads to in this entire progression that I just went through, this is literally our attention is going up through this. It's attention to the ego, attention to the 5 sheaths in the body, attention in the senses, attending to the world. So what we do here is we turn our attention all the way back through that whole system back onto ourself. And it's contemplating this, because at first you're like, this is kind of a little absurd, because I swear that I'm born into this world. Everybody's born into this world. We all agree we're born into this world. And yet, what this is saying is that the world is born into us being consciousness. That consciousness births itself into the manifestation that we know as the world. And we have the intellect to reverse engineer this to see if this is true or not. And the more time we spend in investigating the nature of experience, we get more and more comfortable with it, which means we gain more and more trust to be able to turn within and rest in ourselves. I'd like to apply 2 analogies to this progression, because analogies help us bridge gaps that the mind can't and unwilling to bridge for us. So let's start all the way out here at the world, and then we're going to work our way back. So the first analogy is a very common one. I use it quite often. It's the analogy that, say you go outside one evening and you encounter a snake on the sidewalk, and immediately you tense up and you look closer into the snake to see if it's a bull snake or a garter snake or what kind of snake is it. And as you get closer, you realize that it's nothing other than a rope. And at that moment that you see through the illusion of the snake into the snake's reality of the rope, you come back to your natural state and the body relaxes. This is what happens when you allow yourself to come closer and closer and closer home to yourself. we start to see through the illusion of all these layers into these layers underlying reality. So for instance, the world's underlying reality is the five senses. So this is the snake and this is the rope. We're seeing through the world's illusion into the world's underlying reality, the rope, which is our five senses. And from here, the analogy starts all over again. We're looking through the illusion of the five senses into the five senses underlying reality of the body. And then the analogy starts all over again. We're seeing through the illusion of the body into the body's underlying reality of the egoic energy. And this just goes down and down and down and down until it gets to the complete underlying reality of all of these illusions. And this is the experience of peace. This is the experience of the relaxation of seeing that the snake was none other than a rope. And we can experience that, even if it's just an analogy, we understand that. Because most of us have probably encountered some sort of a snake-like thing in our life that when we looked at it closer, it wasn't that. So from here, another analogy comes into play. Because what was just saying is that we're letting go of everything that we know. If we think about it, everything that I just said, this progression is every single thing that we know. There's nothing outside of this. And what non-duality is saying is that when you come home to this, somehow this is still here. It doesn't black out. It doesn't vanish. It doesn't morph into something else. And neither do you. You actually become your true, pure self. It's pure you. Consciousness is pure you. And this is likened to all of the forms that gold can take. Right? So gold can be a necklace, it can be a ring, it can be a pendant, it can be a bar, it could be a coin. It takes on all of these shapes that we're aware of. Yet all of these shapes or these forms underlying reality is only gold. There is no separation from the gold and the forms the gold takes. We apply this to consciousness. All that we know in the world, as the world, what we see is none other than the form of the formless consciousness. Consciousness is gold, and all of the forms and the objects in the world are gold's objects and forms that it can morph into. What it's saying is when you know yourself from the perspective of consciousness as yourself, the forms that you're looking onto, the world that you're looking onto, is none other than yourself in form. There's no separation there. There's no distance there. It's pure unity. And what's the experience of that? Seeing that the snake was only a rope. So this is what it's meant, that we are not born into the world is born into us. That consciousness births its own self into the form of the manifestation and never becomes separate from it. You could say the world is contained in consciousness, whereas most of us experience that consciousness is within the world or within myself, that it's an attribute of me. That I come before consciousness, that consciousness needs me to exist, to be. And that's just not what we discover when we analyze the underlying reality of everything. It's clearly seen, the closer and closer we come home to ourselves, that the world is contained within us as consciousness and not separate. There's no two things there anymore. It's non-dual. It's Advaita. So let's apply this to some day-to-day experiences. Let's take the taste of chocolate. I'm sure we've all tasted chocolate. We know what chocolate tastes like. You know, even if it comes in these different forms of milk chocolate and dark chocolate and salted chocolate and all the varieties of chocolate, it still has this underlying taste of chocolate. And we know it. The moment we taste, we're like, this is chocolate. And yet, for the life of us, we cannot describe that taste so adequately that somebody else who has never tasted chocolate would know what chocolate tasted like. It's only our experience that we know it's chocolate. Take that in for a minute. That's because we can apply that to everything else we know. And that same confounding realization comes in, like, I only know the taste of chocolate. I only know the sight of a tree. I only know the sound of a car. I can't for the life of me describe it to a point to where somebody else could get it. And where I'm taking us is that this is the understanding that in our direct experience, we can't and we don't know anything. We think we do, but when we scrutinize it, we realize that I can't describe anything to a point to where it makes any sense. it just, in a way, you progress back into the no-thingness of whatever it is you're talking about. I mean, just take like a tree, for example. How would you ever describe a tree to somebody who's never seen a tree? Even though you absolutely know when you see what you think is a tree, like, that's a tree. I mean, it's got this round barky thing that branches out into leaves. Okay, what's bark? I don't know. How do I describe bark? How do I describe a leaf? It kind of stops you in your tracks. This exercise is leading you into the realization that in reality you don't know anything. You can't know anything. So when you start to see it for what it is, you start to allow yourself to let go of the conceptual mind. And when you let go of the conceptual mind, when you realize that you can't and don't know anything, and you say that to yourself, I don't know this conceptually, honestly, and I can't know it, that just means you're coming back into yourself, the one that knows all. This is what it means to investigate into the nature of experience. What is really happening here? What is the only quality here? And that is just the knowing. I know the taste of chocolate. And that's it. That's the only thing that I'm directly experiencing, is the knowing of it. But I don't know it. Same thing goes with the tree and the car. And paradoxically, the more you allow yourself to not know anything, you rest into yourself more and more, which is the experience of peace and wholeness. It's like a massive relief that you can't figure this out. You're surrendering, or you're collapsing into the fact that you can't figure this out and you can't know anything. And in that collapsing, what remains is the knowledge of every no thing, the one substance that Advaita and the physicists point to. So utilize the mechanism, like see if when you walk yourself back, if it starts to make sense, or if you can experience it. And play around with the fact that you can't know anything, that you don't know anything. It's just the mind that thinks it knows the things that you know. Right? The mind is the thinker, it's the doer, it's the experiencer. I mean, it's really this is the definition of an individual or an ego. It thinks it's doing everything, knows everything, thinking everything, experiencing everything. This is, we could say we're pulling back the curtains just a little bit. Whatever that means for you, you're just pulling these back to see what remains if you allow yourself to pull these truths, clear the way back home to yourself. Feel free to ask any more questions if you'd like.